Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to part 2 of how to read various texts. I'm Miss Jennifer Blank, and I'll be your guide on this journey. Just a reminder, get that timer ready, and also a separate sheet of paper. All right, so in the first video lesson, we talked about textbooks, secondary sources, primary sources. Now, in this second lesson, in part 2, we're going to talk about maps, charts, and graphs, political cartoons, and art. So hold on to your hats. Here we go. All right, so maps, charts, and graphs are an interesting conglomerate of stuff. So on this slide, I'm going to talk about maps first. So it can be a primary or a secondary source. That's the interesting thing about maps. It depends on what kind of map you're looking at, right? With maps, especially with in the context of the AP exam, you want to look for a question. Is there a question based on the map? You want to understand the question, and then you want to just determine the answer the best way you can. If there is no question, or if you're having trouble figuring out what exactly the question wants you to do, the next step is to look for the key. All right, the map key is going to tell you what various symbols means. It's going to give you a sense of scale. It's a very, very important tool to understanding a map. And then you're going to observe. All right. Now, these questions you see with observing and analyzing, don't think that they're comprehensive in terms that you have to answer all of those questions. These are just things you should think about that'll help you analyze maps. What pops out at you? What do you notice first? What size and shape is the map? What graphical elements do you see? What on the map looks strange or unfamiliar? These are questions you want to ask yourself when you're in the observation stage. All right. You're describing what's there. When you analyze it, you want to think about things like why the map was made, who was the audience for the map, how was it made, how does it compare to current maps. These are things you want to think about. So this just kind of help guide you. But in terms of the AP exam and most test questions, there's going to be a question there, and it's going to be looking for you to identify something specific within the map. So once you determine what that is, you just got to look at the map, identify it, and move on with life. It doesn't have to be crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, so now I want you to pause the video. I want you to time yourself. I want you to study this map. You have 1 minute. Time yourself. Now I want you to take out that sheet of paper, all right? And we're going to do similar things to what we did in the last video lesson, all right? Write down everything you can remember from the map. You have 1 minute. Everything from the title to the key, whatever it is that you can remember, symbols, cities, countries, whatever you can remember, write it down, all right? You have 1 minute. All right, so now let's move on to charts and graphs. You want to read the outside of the graphic because that is going to tell you what you need to know. You want to look at the source of information, you want to look at the title. You want to look at the labels for rows and columns, the X and Y axes. These are very, very important because that helps you determine what precisely is being measured and how. All right, you want to know the purpose of the graphic and the qualities that are being illustrated. All right, the title is going to give you a big clue into that. You want to know what the quantities the data in a table represent, all right? So if the information on the outside of the table says in thousands, then 100 does not mean 100. It means 100,000. If it says in millions and it says 100, it means 100 million, all right? So some basic math is going to come into play here, so make sure you pay attention. Also, you need to know if they represent an amount or if it's a percentage. That is going to change everything. An amount versus a percentage are two very different things, so make sure you understand that, okay? All right, now also what you want to do is you want to read the inside of a graphic to gather the data from a specific row or column, all right? If you look at the information from outside the graphic and determine whether the number included has to be multiplied, then you can get its real value, all right? So you need to really pay attention to the numbers that are inside the graphic. All right, you want to see if you can develop generalizations, particular statements about connections between the data. All right, you want to try to generalize what you see. Does this tell you that there was a higher mortality rate for infants and new mothers? Does it tell you that most of the immigrants were young, unmarried men? What is the chart telling you? Give us make sure to make some rough generalizations about what you're seeing. You want to develop questions, all right? So information that you would like to know that perhaps the graph doesn't totally illustrate, or questions that it may answer, all right? So this is what you want to think about. So I want you to analyze this chart. You have 1 minute. Pause the video, time yourself, 1 minute. All right, now I want you to take out, excuse me, that sheet of paper. I want you to write down everything you can remember from the chart. You have 1 minute. Keep in mind, you should be making some generalizations. So pause the video, 1 minute. All right, political cartoons. Now, there are various techniques that artists use to create their cartoons. They use symbolism, they use exaggeration, they label, they use analogies, they use a lot of irony. Political cartoons are satirical, all right? They are about commentary. There's a thesis in the cartoon if you know how to look for it, all right? So questions to ask. What issue is a political cartoon discussing, right? What is it portraying? What is the central concern or topic that it's talking about? What is the cartoonist's opinion on the issue? You should be able to figure this out. What other opinion can you imagine another person having about this issue? So the cartoonist has one perspective. What's the opposite perspective or an additional perspective that you can think of? Did you find the cartoon persuasive? Why or why not? Was it funny? Did you laugh? Did you get it? Did you have absolutely no idea what they were talking about? What other techniques could the cartoonist have used to make this cartoon more persuasive? Now, of all these questions, in terms of the AP exam and actually answering questions effectively on standardized tests, issue, cartoonist opinion, other opinions. All right. Whether or not you find it persuasive, nobody cares. Like, I'm sorry, I know that's rude, and we're supposed to, oh, children are so important, and we're supposed to value everything. No. The AP exam does not give a damn what you think. All right. They don't care. They want you to arrive at a particular conclusion. That's the reality. They want you to arrive at a particular conclusion, and they want you to demonstrate that on the exam. So your personal opinion, whether or not you found it persuasive, is immaterial. All right. It's all about the history. All right. So your personal opinion does not matter. All right. So keep that in mind. But those first few questions are going to be essential. All right. Study the image. You have 1 minute. Pause the video. Take out that same sheet of paper. I know I sound like a broken record. And now I want you to write down everything you can remember from the cartoon. You have 1 minute. All right, art. Art is complex. All right, there's a great source here. It's called smarthistory.org, and it has several videos where it discusses how to participate in art analysis, and it even has some specifics for us when we study the Renaissance. You can take a look at, they break down some various perspectives of Michelangelo's David. So definitely check that out. It's a really, really good source, smarthistory.org. Good times. So you're going to follow with art the same basic steps as you do with primary sources. You're going to look at the author, time period, topic, subject, type of source, right? Now, what you want to do as best as you can, you want to identify the art movement of origin. What is it? Mannerism? Is it Baroque? Is it neoclassical? Is it Renaissance? What is it? What is the art movement? Okay, that's going to help you a great deal. Then you want to note the characteristics of the art movement that you see in the piece. Right? Is there, medieval art is very two-dimensional. And so now you see some geometry, that indicates that it's Renaissance. You see people in motion. Do you see idealized versions of people, or do you see in the raw realism? Is it abstract? These are questions you want to ask, and the answers will determine which movement it falls within. All right? You're going to learn about all this year. Historical context. Once you identify that movement, then you can start to get an idea of what the history was at the time, and that's going to help you answer the questions about that piece. You also want to think about point of view. Was the artist paid to produce this piece? All right, was this a piece produced art for art's sake? The artist produced it because they felt the need to. There was no other factor. Things of that nature. You're going to need to think about that. All right. So once you analyze this piece, you have 1 minute. Below, I give you the artist, the title, the date, where the piece is now, and what the medium is. So you're going to pause the video. You're going to analyze this piece. Now I want you to take out that sheet of paper again. And I want you to write down everything you can remember from that piece. You have 1 minute. All right. That's the end. Now, I hope that you pause the video to take notes about the key things I told you to do for each source. And if you did that, then the key things you were supposed to write down were based off of the steps I gave you. So it wasn't just write down everything you can remember. For example, the last piece we just looked at, Identify that art movement. You don't write down everything. You don't write down, oh, well, there's a sheet over here, and there's this little baby angel thing over there. No, you don't write that stuff down. Try to identify the movement, which you should be able to do based on the date. I hope you learned what you needed to. I will see you in the next video.